Is your team not performing well? Is morale low and turnover high? Are you falling further behind the competition? I'm here to help. I'm your host, Shani, and this is the Leadership Show, where business strategy and culture finally meet, and we make the long-awaited shift from rhetoric to results. I promise I'm not your typical boring leadership consultant, and I will help you get your shift together. Let's do this. Good afternoon, Leadershifters. Welcome to the Leadership Show. I'm your host, Shani, and I am joined today by a dynamo, René Banglesdorf. René is not only a pilot and a female in the very male-dominated industry of aviation, she is also the co-founder of Charlie Bravo Aviation, which she runs with her husband, and the author of a book that I know you're going to want to hear about that's called Crushing Mediocrity. With no further ado, because I really want to get right into it, Leadershifters, meet René. René, welcome to the show.
Shani, I am so honored to be on your show today. And if I could shift 100 things, it would be leadership. Really, I think the most important thing that we can shift is leadership. And I am just thrilled and honored to be on your show today and cannot wait to talk to you more about this topic.
Awesome. Well, good. I obviously couldn't agree more. Shifting leaders starts at the top. So it's leaders that need to get their shift together, if you know what I'm saying. And I think you are a role model in that regard. Let's talk about your path into aviation and some of the challenges you experienced as a woman coming up in that industry.
Well, I love that we're talking about shifting because that's really what my career path has been. It's been a series of shifts. So I started studying journalism when I was in college. Had a big shift when I got pregnant and started a family before I finished my degree, and had to shift again as my kids got older. And I felt like I needed challenges for my brain. You know how it is when we're doing one thing and we feel like we're losing sharpness in another area. So I sought out doing some marketing and ended up doing marketing in the aviation space and just fell in love. Okay. And then about 10 years ago, right at the beginning of 2008, just before the recession, my husband and I decided it would be a brilliant idea to start our own company buying and selling private jets. We've survived with a number of shifts over the years and have built quite a company that's been a lot of fun.
What was it like starting a company right at the height of the recession?
Well, ignorance is bliss, right? So we didn't know that it was the beginning of the recession. And then when we started, we were really thankful that we didn't have inventory of planes that were dropping in price very rapidly. You know, we were small and lean. And so it enabled us to be really strategic. And one of the big shifts that we found at the beginning, probably in the first year or so of our business, is that it would be wise to have a WeBank certification, which is a certification that says that we're a woman-run or woman-owned company. Mm-hmm. So Kurt and I were 50-50 partners. He signed over 1% to me, and then we applied, and we were denied. And we were like, what? I am 51%. I'm definitely a woman. What are you talking about? They're like, no. You have to have the highest title. You have to have the highest compensation. You have to have the most firing authority. You really have to lead this company in order to have this WeBank certification. Okay. So we said yes to that. I took the CEO title, and then don't tell them this, but I spent the next 3 years really growing or shifting into that role. And those were some of the years of most profound growth in my career and honestly in my life, as I was filling shoes that I didn't feel adequate to be standing in.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? I think leaders are constantly shifting, even if they grew up in the industry or didn't sort of jump feet first, head first, whatever you want to call it, into a CEO role. I think everybody is always finding their way in this day and age and reinventing themselves. And I did a podcast a few weeks ago where the main message was learn how to learn, because what you know now is obsolete 5 minutes from now, right? So I think
Very true.
You're in good company there. And I want to go back to the original question and hear a little bit more about what, besides starting your business in the recession, what were some of the challenges you faced as now a woman CEO in a male-dominated business?
There were quite a few, because not only am I in a very male-dominated industry, I'm in an even more male-dominated business. So in the aviation industry as a whole, women in leadership roles, even in pilot roles, is less than 10%. So
yeah, let's hear some of the stats. You told me pre-show only 7% of pilots are women.
Yes, and that number has been stagnant for probably 20 years. 6 to 7% in the Air Force, 6-ish% depending on the airlines. And then when you move up into executive positions, it's closer to 4%. I think of the 180 major airlines in the world right now, only one has a female CEO. A few have female CFOs, okay, but only one is truly led by a female. And then in my business, buying and selling jets, I've been able to come up with, doing this for 10 years, about 18 or 20 other women in the world who do what I do. And only two others own their own company doing this. So I'm one of 3 women in the world who own their own company buying and selling planes. So a very small minority. And you asked about what were some of the obstacles that I faced. And so gaining credibility doing that was very demanding. And it was very challenging to walk into a room, being a woman who believes in being feminine and having men take me seriously, because heretofore the women in the room were usually dates or wives of the men who were in the room.
Right.
And so
or getting the coffee.
Or serving the cocktails. Yeah. And so I think there's been a big shift in that as I've demanded respect and educated myself and put myself in positions where I would at least be considered for panel discussions or for leadership roles in the industry. And, it's definitely been an uphill climb, and there have definitely been times that have been very discouraging. And there are still a couple of old timers in the business who buy and sell private jets who won't give me the time of day, won't even acknowledge me at a trade show.
Mm-hmm. Their loss. So what would you say to the women listening? Because there are a lot of female leadershifters who are doing everything they can to bust through the proverbial glass ceiling. What advice do you have for them in terms of building that credibility and demanding the respect that you described?
Number one is be smart. And I mean that in a couple of ways. One is learn everything that you can. You mentioned that earlier from a former podcast guest. Keep learning as much as you can. Learn in creative ways. I mean, stalk some of the industry leaders on social media and see what they're posting and learn from the places that they're learning from. Mm-hmm. I have a business coach who's outside of my industry, who's a huge help to me. And then take risks. I mean, that's one thing that women don't inherently do as much as men. And I often get asked, what would you say to your 25-year-old self? Go for it, girl, go for it. Mm-hmm. If you fall flat on your face, you can still pick yourself up, put your makeup back on and keep going.
Right.
If you get to the end of your life and you can't say that you failed, then you didn't try hard enough.
Abso-fucking-lutely. Like people get so wrapped up in their heads and the fear of failure that they don't even compare it to the upside of succeeding. And if they actually did that math, they would take more risks. They think failing is such a disaster. And it's like, what, are you going to die if that happens? Are the polar ice caps going to melt tomorrow and drown the whole world if that happens tomorrow? No and no. So what is holding you back, sister? Yes.
Right. I was at a mastermind last week, and one of my colleagues, and believe it or not, it was a man who was on the hot seat, was describing to our business coach, the leader of this mastermind, that he had never failed publicly before. He had never had a big public debacle where he failed. And our coach said, that's unfortunate.
Right. It is.
And I'm like, you know what? That's so wise, because once you do it once, like, you have a huge public failure, that people know that you've lost money and you've lost customers and you've fallen on your face, and like, you don't even want to get out of bed the next day. Well, once you've done it, it's like, I survived that. I'm willing to take that risk again, because what if I have that huge public success? Then everything that I will have fought for and all the failures will be worth it.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Now, let's shift a little bit to, what would you tell men and other leaders, I mean, women leaders too, in organizations who are trying to shift their cultures to be more supportive of women leaders and women in general being successful?
Well, first of all, I would say bravo, bravo, bravo. You are smart enough to understand that you need women to round out your team to make your company more successful. And I think there are so many stats and studies out there. We're actually doing one in aviation, probably the first one in aviation right now that'll be out next year, and looking at what women bring to the table. And then I think once you say, yes, we need more women on our team, and we need women in different roles on our team. So we need female engineers, and we need female and male customer service reps, so that we get a balance of thought, and we get a balance of education. We get a balance of risk aversion, or the ability to take risks. And we start looking at problems from different angles. We come up with much better and richer solutions. So if you haven't considered really embracing women as part of your recruitment and retention plan, you need to do that. If you have done it, great. And then there are a few things that I have a podcast on the same topic. It's called Defying the Status Quo, helping companies empower women. And so on that podcast, a lot I talk with companies that are doing a great job at it. I've talked to FedEx, and how in a couple of male-dominated industries with logistics and trucking and aviation, how they do a great job, and they really embrace people's diversity. They look for diversity, and then they allow support groups to really build acceptance within their larger company. So it builds micro communities within the larger community, and that enables people to really share ideas in safe places. And I think communication is one of the key things that we can embrace as leaders wanting to have diverse teams. All female teams should be looking for some men to be part of the conversation as well. It's very important to have that diversity.
Absolutely. What do you think has held industries like aviation back all these years? You said those statistics have been flat for 20 odd years. I mean, in other industries, we have seen, certainly not parity, but we have seen the numbers rise somewhat, let's say in finance and law and whatnot. Why has aviation remained so flat, you think?
Well, I think that there are a couple of reasons aviation's remained flat as far as gender parity. One of those is because women aren't necessarily attracted to aviation all on their own. Most women who are in aviation have been brought in by a man or another woman. So it goes back to kindergarten. Watch next time you're watching Recess at a little preschool or kindergarten, when a dump truck rolls by or a plane flies overhead, the little boys are looking where that noise is. Little girls don't care. They're looking around at their peers and they're nurturing and they're involved with people. Boys like things that go. And there are some women that love things that go too. I mean, my daughter's becoming a pilot right now. I have friends who are race car drivers, who are women.
Motorcycle rider.
Right. But somebody introduced you to that almost every time.
Right.
And in aviation, so many people have been attracted to it for so long that the industry hasn't had to go out and recruit diverse candidates. You know, there are always boys who want to fly. And so we've had to become purposeful about seeking other candidates. And so we're approaching a massive worldwide pilot shortage and aircraft mechanic shortage. So pilots coming out of school now, you mentioned a friend from Embry-Riddle earlier, who was a female. Yep. Pilots coming out of school now are getting paid twice as much as pilots who were coming out 2 years ago. That's how much the spike is increasing because of the demand for more pilots. Mechanics don't have quite the pay increase yet, but they're very much in demand as well. And so we're starting to see some additional recruitment activities to rebuild the workforce or the labor pool in aviation. And finally, people are going, oh, we need to recruit millennials. We need to recruit people who aren't typically middle-class white males. We need to recruit women, and we need to recruit people from other countries and cultures as well. So it's an exciting time to be a change agent in this industry.
I just had a brilliant idea, if I do say so myself, and maybe I'm not the first person to have thought this, but what if we changed STEM to STEAM and it included aviation?
I love it.
Science, technology, engineering, aviation, math.
Well, I've heard a few things with that. Everything to do with aviation, except maybe aircraft sales, is STEM related. So all of the developments that we see going on for drone technology, that's science and technology and engineering and math. So aviation is very much STEM, and it's a systemic problem that women are not necessarily attracted to STEM related careers. Yeah. And then when they are and they come into aviation, we're not necessarily doing the right things to retain them. So companies that, lots of companies that I talk to don't have programs specifically to develop female leaders.
Right.
And I see some big problems with that, Shani, in that women like to perform really well. And when we go into an environment where we are not valued and we're not invited to bring our A game, we get bored and we start looking for an environment where we might be able to flourish. And unfortunately, or fortunately, a lot of times that pushes women in an entrepreneurial direction instead of working for some of the mainstream companies where they could be making a big difference in busting up those glass ceilings.
Yep, absolutely. I see that happen constantly. And it is, I feel like a lot of my clients, when we talk about diversity and inclusion and how do you get a better mix of people going up into the senior ranks, and it's females and it's also other underrepresented workers. The efforts are primarily targeted at recruiting. Okay, well, let's bring in more women and minorities and whatever from college. Okay, great. But right, then most organizations aren't doing what they need to do to motivate, educate, retain, etc. So then you see a precipitous fall off in that.
Right. I think if companies could adopt a more entrepreneurial mindset, it would help. So the things that attract women to entrepreneurship are the ability to create their own runway, if you will, and take it as far as they want to take it, as hard and as fast as they want to take it, right? They're not limited by the constraints of a job. So hire some women, give them some runway to do some things, even if they're not traditionally what your company's done for the last 20 years. And then make it flexible. A lot of women become entrepreneurs because in being an entrepreneur, you have some flexibility to balance your family and your career well. And so if you give some license for that, flex time or remote work days, even if it's only a couple of days a week, you will get so much more performance out of your women. And I think, you've probably had people on talking about this before, but man, I think there's some really great research out there that supports that claim.
Huge. In fact, I'm doing a workshop next week at a healthcare organization where their employee engagement scores have been plummeting. And one of the biggest sources of dissatisfaction and the feedback that they're getting in the qualitative comments is we need more flexibility. And flexibility looks like different things to different people. And obviously clinical staff can't have the same kind of flexibility that non-clinical staff can have, but there's still tons of opportunities. And even though the employees are clamoring for it, primarily Gen X, our generation, and millennials coming up after us, the senior level management in this organization are still very resistant to this. And so I'm being brought in to raise the awareness level of the importance and how it can drive their business results. So absolutely. I would also like to touch upon, because I think that leadershifters will also find this interesting, to the extent many people are becoming entrepreneurs, and not just women. I'm seeing it more and more with men who want flexibility, who want to eat what they kill, who, lots of different reasons that people become entrepreneurs. What's it like to be in business with your husband, or so with a significant other?
Well, today's a good day, so I love it. But if you had asked me last week, I might have said I hate it. It's definitely a skill set that not everyone has, to be able to work with someone that you also sleep with at night. And Kurt and I are empty nesters, so we do a lot of social stuff together as well. Our skill sets balance each other out really well. And we both have really strong personalities. So we have a lot of give and take. And, I hate to admit this, but I don't get my way all the time. But he doesn't get his way all the time either.
Right.
So it's really a good people skill to be able to say, hey, this is really important to me and this is why. And to have him be able to say the same thing back to me, and for us to be able to discuss that.
Okay.
And so, we've learned over the years and we've gotten better at it. I think we make a great team, but just like any team, I mean, you get frustrated with your boss if you have one. You get frustrated with your employees if you have them. And people are messy, and that's no different. It's very rewarding to work with your spouse and build a legacy together.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll also say, on the other side of that coin, it's a little bit frightening sometimes because all of our eggs are in the same basket, right? So if our company fails, we fail. Where people who don't work, who are significant others, who both contribute to the household income and don't work with each other, if one loses their job, then the other one can, pull some weight for a little while. So it's definitely risky. It's definitely rewarding, but we're both, we buy and sell private jets. That is a high risk, high reward kind of business in itself. And then to have all of our eggs in that basket is challenging, but
absolutely.
It's great.
Well, and that creates a type of stress that most people don't have, because their significant other, if they are a dual income household, is generally doing something different, even if they work at the same company. So what I want to say to leadershifters watching is, if Rene and Kurt can make this leadership thing work with that additional layer of stress, you guys can make it work in any of your work relationships without that layer of stress. And it sounds like the keys are to communicate, to not always have to have your way, which means you got to compromise and be open to listening to other people's points of view.
Right. And you also, it does help that he has his things he's responsible for and I have mine. And that goes back to communication, Shani.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Also, among my leader shifters, we have lots of parents. So I want to take us back a little bit to STEM real quick. What advice do you have for parents who would like to have any of their children, not just little girls, get more interested in the STEM fields? Because that's where the future is.
Well, I think it's really interesting for us to talk about some of the opportunities there and to let our kids explore. So, one thing that we miss out with our kids on Snapchat all the time is that they're not getting their or whatever other social media or television or movies or whatever it is, video games. They're not getting their hands involved. They're not hands-on with science and technology necessarily, unless it's computers. So let your kids fly a remote control airplane, take them to an air show, show them some of the possibilities that are out there, and let them be curious and explore those things. I mean, that's where we develop a love for, that's where you developed your love for motorcycles. It's where I developed my love for airplanes. I was curious. I asked questions. I had adventures. So as much as you can do that, open their eyes to things that maybe your eyes weren't open to when you were a kid.
Yep. Great. Which leads me to the last topic, which is I really want to touch upon your book, Crushing Mediocrity. What a brilliant title. It's so appealing. And I would just love to hear, what are a few of the top tips that you give in that book that you think leader shifters would be interested in?
One of the things that I think is really important, and I hit on this at the very beginning, and you could tell how passionate I was, is to get out of your comfort zone. One of the benefits of working with my husband is that he likes to throw me in the deep end of the pool and see if I can swim. And you need someone in your life who can hold you accountable for that and do that. And the more you can push yourself out of your comfort zone on your own, the less you need somebody else to do the shoving or the pushing. So get out of your comfort zone. One of the other things that I talk about in the book, and I co-authored it with my friend, Lisa Copeland, who's in the automotive industry. And she and I talked about the importance to have a group of people around you that support you. So having others to hold you accountable and to encourage you and to pick you up and tell you it's not the end of the world when you fail is really important. And then something that you and I have touched on already is to be teachable. And then one of the really important things that we talk about toward the end of the book is using influence for good and being a change agent. And I think both of those things lend toward the topic of making it about others. And so if we're going to crush mediocrity, we can't do it in a silo or in a bubble. We have to use our influence to help others. And it's a pay it forward kind of concept. When we help others crush mediocrity and they help others crush mediocrity, all of a sudden we're living in an excellent world and not one where we're mired in plain vanilla, mediocre, boring, purposeless, meaningless lives.
It makes my skin crawl even hearing you say those words. I am I am such a mediocrity crusher, and I can't even be around people who don't want to crush mediocrity. So I love the title of the book, and I want to challenge anyone who's watching, leader shifters. How are you crushing mediocrity? Or are you being crushed by the day-to-day, by the drones of emails and daily obligations? I want you to ask yourself that question. How am I crushing mediocrity? Meaning, how are you getting out of your comfort zone? How are you being teachable and learning new things? How are you being a change agent? And do you have a group of other mediocrity crushers that are supporting you?
Because there are no participation trophies in life.
Fuck no. Oh, right.
I knew you would hate those too. I knew it.
Oh my God, yes. Because it teaches people not to want to win, and not that winning is everything. We learn so much from not winning, but if we're not aiming high, we're never going to get anywhere.
Amen, sister.
All right. How can leader shifters reach you, Renee, if they have questions or want to buy or sell an airplane?
Absolutely. So my corporate website is wepush10.com. It's TIN. We push 10, or you can type in charliebravoaviation.com and it redirects. My personal website is renebanglesdorf.com. It's RENE, just one E, Banglesdorf.com. And then I can be reached on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook with just my name, René Banglesdorf.
Great. It wouldn't be a podcast if I didn't ask you at least one devil's advocate question, which would be, what if you're watching this and you're like, yeah, like works for her because she's attractive and she's got confidence. What do you say to a woman who's trying to crush mediocrity, or anybody else, frankly, who's trying to crush mediocrity and be more powerful and make change happen in organizations, who doesn't have the confidence that you have?
Well, I didn't have confidence when I was younger, and I've had to grow that. And you grow your confidence by taking risks. Maybe your risk is small today. Maybe it's sending an email to someone in leadership, asking for a meeting and asking for advice and taking a step out of your comfort zone there. Okay. And every time you really want to make change, the very next step should be something that's maybe in your comfort zone that's going to take you someplace much farther along. So break down the steps that it's going to take you to make that big change or that big shift, and break it down into small enough pieces that you can tackle the next one without vomiting, right?
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. So one step at a time, you got to take risks, no reward. And to those of you who have been watching and feel inspired to continue to elevate the profile and the success rate of women at your company, continue to say yes to doing that. And not just at the hiring level, but at every level of development. How are you helping women and other underrepresented people in your organization succeed? Because at the end of the day, that brings much more diversity of thought, much more innovation, and much more success to your innovation. This is not just a check the box. This results in real significant dollars and cents for your organization. So thank you, Leadershifters, for joining me and Rene today. Thank you, Rene, for sharing your wisdom with us today. It's been awesome to have you on the show, and I wish you continued soaring success in your business.
Thank you so much, Shani. It's been a pleasure being on with you today, and I can't wait to meet a whole bunch of Leadershifters.
Yes. Excellent. Leadershifters, thanks for joining us. Until next time, reach us at hello@theleadershiftproject.com, and also any of our social media. Till next time.